Howdy friends, Craig here. In this episode, we picked the brain of John Fox to get all the secrets of how to effectively play Bayou Zipp and the infamous crew. Stick around to the end where I force him to reveal some of the best ways to counter this frustrating keyword. Before we jump in, our friends at Gadzooks Gaming have a sweet offer for all of our US and Canadian listeners. Now, Gadzooks Gaming has always been a big supporter of the Third Floor, as well as Malifaux and a ton of other games like Wild West Exodus, Dark Age, Frostgrave, and Legion. What makes it my favorite online retailer is the customer service and their amazing custom terrain and accessories. They are giving all of our North American listeners free shipping if you spend over $100 and use the promo code Third Floor, spelled out one word, THIRD. Check them out at gadzooksgaming.com. All the details are in the show notes. The promo code is Third Floor. Now on to the episode.
I did almost forget somebody that is probably one of the most important schemers in the crew, and that is Maris LaCroix.
Oh, is she infamous?
He can remove a piano marker, which is big. He can also remove terrain markers. He can remove corpse markers, pyre markers, anything in the game. Like, this is not a guy you want to drop Rasputina against. One you will probably see all of the time in Bayou. This guy is just gross, and that's the first mate. You discard the top 10 cards of your Fate deck and choose 3 cards in your discard pile and shuffle them back into the Fate deck. Then you draw a card.
One more time. What happens now? Being able to go toe-to-toe with Lady J and surviving says everything we need to know about First Mate.
Things better than stepping away from the screens, unplugging and sitting around a table to do battle with your friends. Every week, Third Floor Wars brings you the latest strategies, tactics, and reviews on board games, card games, and miniature games like Malifaux. If you want useful information on the games you already play, or new insights on great games other people are playing, you are in the right place. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk broadcast.
Craig here on the Third Floor. Today we're going to do a deep dive into the Bayou Master Zipp and how the infamous crew works in Malifaux 3rd Edition. My guest is John Fox. Now, he's a local here in North Carolina, and he holds the honored distinction of giving me my first of many Round 1 tournament losses. John was very active in the beta using Bayou, and we're happy to have him on the show. So, John, welcome to the Third Floor. Can you give us a little bit of a background on you as a player and what brought you to Malifaux?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a weird sort of move into miniature games because I started with a game called Mage Knight back in like the early 2000s. It's one that pretty much no one knows anymore because it just died a horrible, horrible death. But I've played pretty much everything else since then.
Yeah, I've heard of Mage Knight, but I've never played it. What was the idea behind it?
It was kind of a neat thing because it was done in booster packs. So instead of being like models that you just bought, specifically, you went out and bought that model, you bought booster packs and you got random models. It was the precursor to HeroClix, which is still around and still fairly popular.
Gotcha. And was it played like on a hex or a grid or?
No, it was using inches and
no kidding.
Standard movement. It was pretty fun. They kind of did this weird rules change, and when they did, it just instantly lost everybody. Plus, superheroes are just much more popular, so when HeroClix started to take off, that was it for everything else kids did.
Gotcha. So, what did you see a Malifaux model and say, what is that? Or did a buddy get you into it? How did it happen?
Well, I was living down in Wilmington, and I played at the amazing Cape Fear Games. If you ever get a chance to get down that way, they have one of the best stores that I've ever played at, some of the greatest people. And they had all of these first edition Malifaux stuff just hanging around. And it was right when second edition was getting ready to come out. So they were like, we're just going to discount all of this stuff. And I'd been eyeballing it at like $30, $40. But when they discounted it all down to like $15, I bought everything Neverborn and everything Resurrectionist that they had.
Yeah, it's hard to turn away a discount like that. And I think that there's some new players here as we transition into third edition. They're doing the same thing with the deep discounts we're seeing on second edition stuff.
Oh, I certainly hope so. I think that a lot of the old boxes are definitely going to be great picks, especially if they don't change that much between second edition and third edition.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited by a lot of the new sculpts, but if I was just getting into the game, now is the time to scoop that stuff up. Well, let's focus a little bit more on our kind of a topic at hand, John. So we're going to talk about Zipp and the Infamous crew, and what I'm going to do with John is we're going to dig deep into how he builds an Infamous crew, and I want to understand, how he plays them, what are his paths to victory when considering the opponent and the scheme and strategy pool. So, John, let's start off. Can you give us kind of a general overview on Zipp?
All right. So Zipp's entire purpose in the game is to be as annoying as possible, which is perfect because that's exactly what the theme of his character is. This guy is a gremlin who stole a guild airship, and he and his band of pirates basically run around causing mayhem and mischief and driving everyone crazy. And he does this on the board almost exclusively. I think the big take for me with Zipp is that I don't look at what strategies does he do well. I look at what does he make my opponent have to work harder for, because that's what Zipp is. Zipp is all about denial.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool angle, I think, for a master. And I like that perspective, John, where you say, this may not be the best strategy or pool for him to score in, but it's going to be really hard for my opponent to score, and I only need to pick up a few points to win the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what Zipp does. So the entire Infamous keyword has the showboating ability, which is not game breaking. There's some like keyword abilities that are just absolutely like amazing. And Zipp's keyword is good, but I wouldn't classify it as game-changing. So showboating just says, if you cheat during your activation, you get to draw a card at the end of the activation. So it's basically a filter, which means that you can play a little looser with your hand, and you can even, if you want to, like, cheat a duel you're going to lose, just so you can get a card back. So you can throw a 1 or a 2 and hopefully take a gamble on getting a better card.
I think that's one of the biggest things for especially new Zipp players to pick up on, because, when I initially looked at Zipp, that had never even crossed my mind. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So a decent, one card cycling per activation. But I think the first time someone suggested, hey, you're going to lose this duel anyway, so why don't you cheat that 1 or that 2 or that 3, and you're, likely to be pulling in a better card. That's when it kind of unlocked in my head.
At the least, you're just going to break even, which is
right.
Fine. You get a low card off the top of your deck, which is good anyway. So there's no downsides to showboating. The other ability that shows up a lot is this really cool ability called Free Loot. You effectively get to pick up an enemy scheme marker within 2 inches, draw a card, and place yourself where that enemy scheme marker was. So this is situational, but it's pretty good. Like, the ability to just have a bonus action to get out of combat can make a big difference to survivability.
Well, yeah, and it's really kind of a twofold benefit, right? Because you've got the movement, which, the more I'm talking to people in these deep dives, there's one theme that keeps popping up, which is, placement on the board and the ability to efficiently move on the board are huge in this third edition. So with this ability you're talking about, not only do I get some movement, some placement, but you're also picking up scheme markers. And, there's a reason that opponent put that 1 down there. So I think we're going back to what you said right out of the gate, which is, he's going to be a huge speed bump between you and scoring points, or your opponent and scoring points.
Absolutely. It's more denial, which is exactly what Zipp does. And if you love movement, well, Zipp's crew is the crew to do it. It's probably one of the most mobile crews in the game. And that's what Zipp is all about. He is absolutely one of the fastest models in the game. He moves at 8. And
that's so incredible.
It really is.
And it's fly, right? It's not only 8 inches; it's an 8-inch fly.
Yeah, it's fly. And if you've listened to any of the Schemes and Stones podcast, you know that flight is pretty exceptional right now because it's a place and not a move.
Yeah, and Malifaux is meant to be played with a lot of terrain, and if you in fact are doing that, flight and the ability to ignore. And do that place is a big deal. How about any kind of offensive abilities?
He absolutely does. He has a famous zip gun, which has a blast on every single damage track. So that's pretty cool.
Even the min?
Even the min. It's a 2 blast, 3 blast, 5 blast damage track. And anything that is damaged by it gets pushed 1 inch in any direction. So he's already moving people around. He just happens to hit that blast. We're on an 8-inch range on the gun and a stat 6. So it's pretty decent.
Yeah. In the Rasputina deep dive I did with Robert, I think we really kind of made a big point of this is, you read something like that and you say, well, 1 inch, that's not that big of a deal. But when you see it on the table and it comes into play, when you realize an inch means a lot more now in 3rd edition than 2nd edition, and when almost all of the scoring is based off of where models are at any point in time, a 1 inch can be the difference between a score and no score.
Oh, without a doubt. And he has triggers too that just make it even more silly. You can have a trigger to add another blast to the damage so you can hit more models with it. And you have a convulsion trigger, which moves the target an additional 3 inches, and you can discard a card to move Zipp 3 inches. So
I'm getting frustrated listening to this, let alone playing against it.
Yeah. Zipp just keeps moving around. He also has a melee ability called Up We Go. This is the same one that Karis has, I believe. It's a 2-inch range. It's versus size. It's a stat 3, but it's versus size. And you place the model anywhere within 3 inches of its current position. It takes a 2, 3, 4 damage. Then he has a trigger that, once again, pushes the target 3 more inches and then places Zipp in base contact with it. Or it gains injured 1 for every crow. And it doesn't have a built-in trigger. So, you're 1, if you spend a soulstone, I guess you could get 2 crows. But injured 1 is really good right off the bat.
Yeah, injured in the way the injured stacks, especially that again, another ability that you read and go, okay, but when you see it on the table, it's critical. And I think that for those listeners out there that have yet to play 3rd edition, that have just been, looking at 3rd edition, I'll warn you right now, you have to get models on the table. So if you're reading a model and you think, oh, that's fine, or that's no big deal, or it seems overcosted, get it on the table, get a game or 2 in with every model you think that. And I think you're going to find that, stuff that you discounted because of, it didn't read strong, or maybe, in the framework of 2nd edition, it didn't seem strong. 3rd edition's a different game.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. There are models that I've looked at and just have thought, why? And we'll talk about one of those actually here when we get to the versatile models that I just looked at and I was like, why would I ever take this? And when I put it down on the table, I was like, oh yeah, that's why. But getting back to Zipp, we have one more very important thing that he does. It's pretty much his key thing. He drops pianos on people. Piano markers are 40 millimeters. They're, I'm pretty sure, the only terrain marker that is 40 millimeters. I don't know why that decision was made, but it's very important. Don't bring 50s. They're 40s. They're impassable. They're height 3. They're destructible, so you can move them, but Zipp drops 1 at 6 inches, and he can give up 2 cards or he can give up pass tokens to create additional markers.
And what's the height on them again, John?
They're height 3.
That's nice.
So they're going to block everything. And this is why one of the reasons I absolutely love Zipp is that he can run around. He's super fast. He gets up the board. If the terrain, and like we said, Malifaux is a very terrain-heavy game. So if the terrain provides, he can just drop 2 markers right next to each other, and you've got to spend AP to remove those markers, or you're going to have to go around them to get to do what you want to do. And with Malifaux being a very action-oriented game, losing that extra AP to go around or to remove markers is a big deal.
Yeah, efficiency of action is another theme that keeps coming out of these deep dives. And, you don't think about it necessarily this way, but, when you put all your models on the table and your opponent puts all their models on the table, there's 5 turns. So there really is a limited pool of actions, and anything that you can do to take away that resource from your opponent is going to, greatly increase your chances of winning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to round off the final list of Zipp's annoyance, he has the chatty aura, which means that you have to discard cards to interact, which is super frustrating. And he has a bonus action, which is boring conversation. So it's a 6-inch aura, and until the end of phase, when an enemy model within range declares a non-walk action, it must pass a 10 willpower duel if the action fails. Now, a 10 willpower duel it's not that big a deal, but it's more cards possibly out of your hand and more flips.
It's putting the pressure.
Yeah, like if my opponent flips a 13 on that duel, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's a 13 that you didn't get on the swing that opponent was about to take. So that kind of gets into his defensive abilities. What's keeping Zipp alive?
The only thing that really keeps Zipp alive is his trigger, which is blasting off again. Great Pokemon reference there, but he has a after resolving trigger that places him anywhere within 6 inches of his current location. So it's if he gets hit, if he doesn't get hit, if you spend a mask or you have a mask, he's going to move 6 inches. He's going to place 6 inches away, which might put him behind terrain, but it's definitely going to put him out of their threat range for the most part.
Yeah, and now is that on defense or willpower?
It is on defense.
Okay, gotcha. And is the mask built in?
It is not built in. So you do have to spend for that. Okay. And really that's it. Like, other than that, his mobility, I think, is a big defensive trick for him. Like, he's not going to be easy to pin down. You're going to probably be dropping piano markers in the way. Like, it's going to be tough to get to Zipp. I want to say I've played probably 12, 13 games with Zipp since the beta started, and he's died exactly once.
Oh, that's pretty good.
He's just too fast. And hopefully you've got other threats that they have to worry about more than Zipp.
Now, is he really it sounds to me like he's a pretty independent master, so that he doesn't really have, kind of that linchpin support role with the rest of his crew. Is he can, it sounds like he can be pretty independent of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can definitely play him independent. When we get into the rest of the crew, you'll see where they kind of use some of his stuff, especially the piano markers, to get some benefits. But yeah, he can be very independent. It's kind of cool because you can build Zipp very thematic with all of his keyword models, or you can dip into versatile models, or you can even use him as a great, probably one of the best secondary masters in the game.
Yeah, I think that I anticipate we're going to see him be a very popular hire from other Bayou and even Outcast masters.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I think he brings a lot to Outcast especially, but to Bayou, it's just, anything you can do to keep your opponents off of being on top of you is perfect.
Yep. Yeah. Bayou can be squishy. So that having the, all of that stuff, the piano markers, the speed and everything like that has got to be a pretty big deal. So I think we can kind of categorize Zipp as piss you off, Master?
Yes. Yeah, that's it. He is absolutely, and like I said, I love the fact that he blends his theme into the model on the table. Like, this guy is doing exactly what you expect a crazy gremlin sky pirate to be doing.
Yeah, I so far I give both Kyle and Matt a ton of credit. I think that they, from a design perspective, have done a really good job of making what was already a pretty fluffy game even fluffier. I mean, my big takeaway from a lot of these deep dives, whether it be Karis or Rasputina, we've got the Marcus one that just came out. They just feel like they read and hear on the Breachside broadcast. They did a heck of a job with that.
Oh, without a doubt. And that's one of the things that brought me into Malifaux. Especially when second edition was coming out, I was looking at all these models and I was like, these guys are really cool. Like, here's Seamus with his his undead prostitutes. And then here's, McMorning, and he's got these crazy flesh constructs, and this is really cool. And I think by the end of second edition, we kind of drifted away from that a little bit and started looking at
I agree.
What are the more efficient models to play, but the keyword system has really brought us back into, I can play the cool themes and I'm not sacrificing anything to play the cool themes.
Yeah, and it not only encourages those themed crews, but even more fun is the fact that they feel thematic, right? So mechanically they feel like their theme.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Zipp is very much that. I mean, Showboating and Infamous says it all. These guys want attention. They're going to get your attention, and they're going to do it in the most obnoxious ways possible.
That's so cool. All right, John, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit outside of just Zipp. So you'll have Zipp. We'll talk about his totem, but I want to talk about other things that you're hiring on a regular basis. So we'll be right back. Howdy friends, Craig here. With 3rd edition Malifaux released, it's time for you to get a new mat with new deployment zones. We've tried every mat in the business, and nobody has better quality and selection than Mats by Mars. They're waterproof and they roll and unroll easily, and they're even wet erase Marco compatible. They offer over 35 designs and let you add M3EO overlays for making deployment and positioning a breeze. Check them out at matsbymars.com. They are offering a sweet discount for our listeners. After you found the perfect mat, use the promo code THIRDFLOOR to get 10% off your entire order. If you really want to support us, in the notes of your order, request that our logo be put in the corner of your mat. It's the only way to make the best mat in the business even cooler. Again, that's Mat by Mars. Use the promo code THIRDFLOOR to get a 10% discount. Details are in the show notes. So the infamous Zipp is, doing his thing, frustrating the heck out of his opponent. I've got a sneaking suspicion he's not the only annoying model with the keyword infamous. So, John, can we talk about a little bit about kind of the core crew? So what I'm finding in these deep dives is most people I'm talking to, they have anywhere from 3 to 6 models that are just consistently making up their thematic, keyword crew. And, then they're flexing, anywhere from, 5 to 20 stones after that. I really want to get a sense of, who's the core crew for you? Who always gets hired as soon as you decide you're going to play Zipp?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you can't talk about Zipp without his totem, Earl. Poor Earl is a human that was a mechanic on the ship, and he just got drug along with Zipp because he can fix things. And this guy is, so first thing we forgot to talk about with Zipp, he can't interact. He literally has better things to do.
Oh.
So Earl does it for him. Earl gets to move along with any model that is nearby, any friendly model that's nearby. He gets to tag along if he's close to them. So basically, Zipp is constantly dragging Earl along. And in my mind, I'm always just imagining him grabbing onto Zipp's leg, barely hanging over the battlefield, terrified, but he is how Zipp does interactions, and he does it really well. He can also drop piano tokens. He can't drop as many as Zipp, but an extra token on the board is an extra token on the board. And he has the ability to heal constructs, which doesn't come into play very often, But when it does, it's a nice little clutch, I just healed something and that's awesome. So
now is Zipp a construct?
Zipp is not a construct.
Gotcha. Okay.
But Iron Skeeters are,
right,
which is important. So he has the looted supplies ability. At the start of his activation, if he's in base contact with a scrap or a corpse marker, he can draw a card. And of course, because you're placing him after Zipp moves, you can pretty much make sure you're going to be able to place him where you need him to be. He also has the ability, if a piano marker is removed within 6 of him, another friendly model within 6 may heal 1, which is nice. Cool because we'll get into how piano markers get moved by your crew and not necessarily even your opponent's crew.
Nice. How about who's doing damage in an Infamous crew? Who's your core beaters?
Oh boy. So we got 2 guys. One you will probably see all of the time in Bayou. This guy is just gross, and that's the first mate. So for 9 points, you get probably one of the best henchmen, I'm going to go ahead and say, in the game, but we'll see as that plays out. He has stealth. He has butterfly jump. He has pounce. He has showboating. Yeah. Like, this guy has all the stuff. He has an ability called Carry the Loot. So after an enemy scheme marker within 6 is removed, he can draw a card. He has a 2/3/5 attack that has a built-in crit strike. He has leap.
Wow.
Yeah, with a trigger to take an extra action.
Yeah.
So this guy is absolutely just a monster. And he has both the Infamous and the Swamp Fiend keyword. So you're going to see him in Zipp. You're going to see him in Zoraida. You probably will even see him in Neverborn Zoraida. This guy is just mean.
Yeah, that's a lot of abilities for 9 points. How many wounds does he have?
He has 9 wounds. So
that's pretty good,
he doesn't
man.
really have any.
And he can use stones.
Yeah, he can use stones. That's really his only defensive tech outside of stealth and butterfly jump. The butterfly jump is amazing. There was a game at that first tournament that we did for the beta where he squared off against Lady J in the corner trying to score a power ritual. And every time she would attack him, he just butterfly jumped 3 inches away. And between my soul stones, he just couldn't kill first mate. So I was able to get that power ritual point because he'd just jump out, drop the marker again, and Lady J would have to keep coming after him.
Being able to go toe-to-toe with Lady J and surviving says everything we need to know about first mate.
Yeah, especially if you consider the fact that once you get on him, that's it. He doesn't have any armor or anything else. He continues the infamous annoying tendency. And
now you said there was 2. So we're going to see a lot of first mate. Who else might we see?
All right. So our favorite gremlin wrestler has made it over to Infamous. Mancha Roja. He has 10 soul stones for an absolutely huge beat stick. So you've got showboating. You've got flurry. You've got rush. You've got the defensive trigger for Cage Fighter, which is built in. So it's a 2/3/4 damage flip if you hit him. He's hard to wound, and he has an ability called My Time Is Now. So if he is near a piano marker when his activation ends, he gets shielded too.
Oh, wow.
So hard to wound, shielded 2, Cage Fighter. You're not going to want to try to go into this guy unless you can take him out in a hit or 2. Like, he is a big beat stick. He's got a 3/4/5 damage track, and he can remove a non-scheme marker. If he does, then the target gains injured 1 as well as take damage.
So he could remove a piano marker if need be.
He can remove a piano marker, which is big. He can also remove terrain markers. He can remove corpse markers, pyre markers, anything in the game. Like, this is not a guy you want to drop Rasputina against. Reva really doesn't want to see him on the board. Like, pretty much Titania probably doesn't want to see him on the board.
Yeah, that's good.
He has a trigger that allows him to get +1 damage for each condition on the target. Now, keep in mind, he already gives him injured. Mm-hmm. So any other triggers, like, he can get up to +2. So that's a min 5.
Well, as a McMorning player, I just got a shiver because, I'm loading up my my crew with poison, and all that does is just increase the amount of damage that this wrestler can do against me.
And he's flurry, so he's going to hit you twice, discard a card, hit you again.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. How about who's doing the scheming?
All right, so scheming is a little weird. We do have flying piglets. Sorry, we have flying piglets in Infamous. Flying piglets are pretty cool. For only a 3 cost, you get a significant move 5 flyer, and they turn into a scheme marker when they die. So even if you kill them, they're still doing their job. These guys are awesome. They basically are just going to make it around the board. You can hire as many of them as you need to hire, and they're just going to get in the way. Another good model is the Iron Skeeter. It's a little expensive. It's cost 7, but it's also a move 7 flight model, and it has sputtering exhaust, so it gets concealment. So when it's not activating, so it can hide.
And it can drag models with it, right?
It has a bonus action for fly with me. So yeah, you can grab a model, fly it off, do the thing. I've definitely, and it's a size 3, so it can pick up pretty much every Gremlin model because most of them are 1. You can be really funny if you want to. Give it the upgrade, the trench coat upgrade, which gives it +1 size, and then it picks up Mancha and it's flying Mancha around 2.
Some of that, sometimes you'll see a limit on those abilities. Can he pick up Zip if he has that upgrade? Is there a limit to non-master?
There's not a limit. It's just target another friendly model with lower size.
Nice.
As a matter of fact, one of my favorite lists with him is to take Ophelia in the crew and then have him fly Ophelia around so she can spend all of her activation shooting things.
Very, very nice. So it sounds like, First Mate is high value, but expensive. The Matarosha is also not a cheap model. It sounds like Iron Skeeters aren't cheap models. How big is your standard Zip crew end up being?
It's usually the standard for M3E, which seems to be between 8 and 9 models. Just really depends what I want to do with the crew. So usually either I will go sort of a kind of heavy bringing in my elite crew, which is going to be Bird Jepson and Gracie and First Mate, because Bird Jepson and Gracie are both Infamous as well. So they kind of work as like an elite pair. Mm-hmm. Or if I see that there's going to be a lot of terrain markers and such, then I'll switch over and play Mancha Roja and the Wrestlers. And the Wrestlers are basically just 5-point mini Mancha Rojas.
So they're cheap beaters.
Yeah, they're super cheap. They're only 5 points, and they have basically all of his abilities, including being able to pick up a marker and punch people with it. Now,
within keyword, I'm hearing the beaters. I'm hearing the schemers. Is there any pieces that you would consider, Infamous support models?
In Infamous crews, there aren't really in Infamous itself doesn't really have much in the way of support. Uh-huh. Most of their models are kind of independent, which I think is cool because once again, that's part of that. Being Infamous, you kind of want to get all the attention to yourself.
Right.
I did almost forget somebody that is probably one of the most important schemers in the crew, and that is Maris LaCroix.
Oh, is she Infamous?
Flight 7 moves. She can drop shockwave markers. She is amazing. And she will show up.
She's good.
Probably, I would say, between 80 to 90% of my Infamous crews.
God, that is a fast crew, my friend.
Yeah, it's ridiculously fast. And when we get into talking about how we play schemes and strats, that's the big deal.
I bet. Well, before we head in that direction, how about out of keyword or versatile models? Any of them, tend to be a common hire?
All right, so we were talking about models that when you put them on you don't know about how good they are till you put them on the table. And I think there's one model in the past couple of weeks that has just turned my head once I started playing him, and that is Gluttony.
Interesting.
So this guy is a cost 7 model. He has manipulative. He has the resonance ability, which doesn't matter if you're playing him by himself. But he has an ability that says after an enemy model within 6 inches takes an interact or drops an enemy scheme marker, gains a send token. He has Consumed by Gluttony, which says when an enemy model would drop a enemy scheme marker, they can discard a sin marker to drop a friendly scheme marker instead.
Ooh, that's nice.
It's pretty cool. But the thing I like him for with Zipp is he has Maddening Drums. It's a 10-inch range versus willpower. Choose a marker within 6 inches in line of sight of the target. Push the target into base contact with the chosen marker. Remove all markers in base contact with the target, and that target suffers 2 damage for every marker removed this way to a max of 4.
So you're pushing them into piano markers.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And it's 4 damage, no flip. Like there's no damage flip. It's just a flat 4 damage, and a lot of models in this game that are not masters can't take 4 damage without any significance. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal. And is it an opposed duel to get it off, or is it just? It is. Okay, gotcha. So
that's 6 versus willpower.
Got it. Okay. All right. Wow, that's still pretty good though. And I haven't looked beyond Rezzers as far as the Crossroads 7. I didn't realize that sin mechanic applies. Is that across all Crossroads 7s? I haven't even really looked. I know that Sloth has it, but it looks like all of them have it. So that's cool.
Yeah, the sin token thing is definitely good for them. But yeah, Gluttony just like he's a solid model altogether, but he also, once again, is a huge denial model that if you're dropping scheme markers, I'm punishing you for it.
Yep, that's good. How about other versatile models?
Well, you'll be remiss to not talk about the Lucky Emissary. We already have a couple big beaters in the crew, but this guy has armor ignore on a trigger, which is a big thing. One of the kind of key weaknesses, I think, for Bayou in general is that they don't do really well against defensive tech. So armor, shielded, incorporeal, they struggle against. So having one guy in there that could possibly break your armor, pretty good. Plus he's mobile, so he fits with the crew.
That's very cool. And it's a cool model. So I would love to be able, you never really saw him on the table in 2. And I've always thought it was such a neat model. It'll make me happy if we start seeing him on the table in 3.
Yeah, he's absolutely, he's a neat model. And I think you'll see him quite a bit. The other guy I think that you're going to see a lot in Bayou, and everybody that I know has been talking about him, is Big Brain Bryn.
Yeah, tell me about him.
He's vicious. He's another one of those models that when you first look at him, you're like, I'm not really sure why I'm taking this guy. He's a 9 soul stone henchman. He's a little expensive when you get him out of keyword, but he's your only source of arcane reservoir in the faction. So that's good.
It's always good.
He has intuition. So you're looking at the top 3 cards of the deck when he activates. He's really hard to take down, actually, because he has Serene Countenance and he has Protected Bayou. So if he's near another gremlin, you're not killing him very, very easily. But the big thing he does is calculate the possibilities. So it's a 7 stat. You need a 7 for it to go off. You've done intuition, so you should have the 7. You discard the top 10 cards of your fate deck and choose 3 cards in your discard pile and shuffle them back into the fate deck. Then you draw a card.
All right, one more time. What happens now?
You discard 10 cards. You take 10 cards off the top of your deck, put them in your discard pile.
Okay.
You put 3 cards from your discard pile back into your deck, and you draw a card.
Oh, that's really good.
It is super good. If your deck is pretty thick right now and you really don't want, like you look at your hand and I've got 3 Severes in my hand, shuffle 10 cards off, put a couple Severes back. You've probably gotten rid of a lot of weaks and moderates you weren't going to use anyway.
Yeah, that's good.
He has condition removal, which is good. Not only the condition removal, but it gives you focus as well. Huge. And he has a minion only obey. So
cheapers. How much is he?
He is 8 points, 9 points out of a keyword. So
and what keyword is he?
But he's Trixie. He's Moz.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Yes. So he's a big deal. Like this guy just is the support I think that Bayou wants and needs. I don't put him in every list, but I have definitely talked to people that are like, yeah, he's going to be everywhere. So
yeah, there's a lot of utility there, and combined with Zipp's card cycling and stuff, that's a pretty strong combination. I could see it where it'd be worth the out of keyword tax. Now we talked, John, about the fact that Zipp makes a great hire for other Bayou masters. Are you ever, or have you tried hiring in? You mentioned Ophelia. Have you hired in Ophelia before?
Oh yeah. I did it against poor Marcus in the Lady J game. He just didn't know what to do about her. Like, she just shot things around, and when he got Lady J near her, the Skeeter just picked Ophelia up, carried her off. She continued shooting things. So Ophelia is really good to give you some more range options. Zoraida is another secondary master that I've brought in once or twice. I mean, if you want more cards, Zoraida is the way to do it. If you want to obey people, Zoraida is the way to do it. Like, Zoraida, I think, is another 3rd edition boogeyman that you're going to see around a lot.
Yeah, you're hearing a lot of chatter about how good she is.
And it's perfectly justified. Her obey that has a trigger for a second action is just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's efficient as hell.
The other thing to talk about are upgrades, because I think upgrades are a big deal. So Gremlins have 3 upgrades, as does everyone. But the 2 to really talk about are going to be 12 cups of coffee and inferiority complex. So 12 cups of coffee has a diversion ability, so enemy models can't declare bonus actions within 4 inches. If you put it on Zipp, this is another way Zipp is going to absolutely just become a focus for my opponent doesn't do anything. And mark territory as a bonus action. Remove all scheme markers within range. Gain a focus for each marker removed that way. So if you put it on a minion, they get twitchy. So after another model ends its activation, if this model is unengaged, it just gets to move 1. More mobility on anything in Zipp's crew is just icing on the cake. Like, it's gross.
Yeah, that's pretty good, man. And you and I have, in our local chat, I keep hearing you say that you suspect that Bayou is where we're going to see the most common uses of the generic upgrades.
Oh, without a doubt, especially when you look at the next one, which is inferiority complex. It gives ruthless, so ignores terrifying manipulative. It gets swagger, so you get free focus whenever you walk. And if it's a minion, it gets bully. This isn't as good in Zipp, really, because Zipp his minions aren't really dealing too much with other models. But swagger and ruthless on, say, Mancha Roja or on the already juggernaut that is the first mate, just gross.
And what's bully? I'm not familiar with it.
Bully says that if the model is a lower cost than the model that has bully, you get to add a free suit to your attacks.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, those are good upgrades, man. Good upgrades.
When we talk about other crews where in Bayou with obeys that are lower cost models, we're definitely going to talk about inferiority complex and bully because it's huge.
Yeah, I could see that. Any other models we need to make sure we give a shout out to?
That's pretty much it. That's in Zipp's crews. Those are all the models I'm going to be looking at.
Very nice. What we're going to do now, John, we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit more about how the pool and the faction and masters declared by your opponent are impacting your builds. So we'll be right back. Howdy folks, Craig here. Now if you love gadgets as much as we do, you're going to love the new Third Floor Wars Gadget Bundle from Schooner Labs. Branded with the logo of your favorite podcast, it comes with 2 measuring multi-tools, a compass stepper for those tight and important movements, along with a compact dashboard to track your turn, strat, and scheme scoring along with your soul stones and pass tokens. It is the perfect bundle for anyone who plays Malifaux or just wants to look cool while doing it. The link is in the show notes. Check them out and help support your favorite gaming podcast. So now that we have an idea of, really what Zipp does and kind of John's core crew, and really, it sounds to me like Zipp has a hell of a selection to choose from. I want to take us bring us a little bit closer to actual gameplay. So, you've got a pool, John. Your opponent has declared their faction. You've got your core crew. You've got your flex stones. Can you kind of give me an idea, how all of that's impacting your builds? So let's start specifically with what is the strategy that makes you immediately think Zipp is who I'm going to bring to the table?
Plant explosives. There's no other master I even look at in Bayou for plant explosives besides Zipp. So you take Maris, you load her up with 2 explosives. You take the first mate, you load him up. You give Earl an explosive or 2, and they're going to be across the enemy line probably on turn 1, maybe on turn 2, if you're worried about getting shot at all. Like, they're just so fast that, especially in flank or wedge, they're going to be across the board. And
yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you could be seeding all 4 points within the first turn or 2.
And I think that's how you win plant explosives. Honestly, like, you just drop as much as you can on turn 2, and then you spend the rest of the turn denying your opponents, which is also what Zipp does, because Zipp is going to be dropping piano markers and stopping your opponent from getting to their side of the board. So you scored all yours. They haven't scored theirs. The game, all you got to do is hit your schemes.
Yeah, I think the sooner you can get your opponent, especially in plant explosives, the sooner you can get them in a position where they're having to decide between denying and scoring, and you're in a position where you're just worried about denying, is going to put you in a nice spot.
Oh, absolutely. And all you have to do, I think, then is just bring Mancha and some wrestlers or something that just to tie people up. Literally, that's all they're doing is just tying people up and keeping them from getting across the board. So
yeah, that's good. How about Turf War? Have you played Zipp into Turf War?
I have, actually. Zipp is pretty good into Turf War, once again, for mobility. I think Turf War is a little more of a, kill models to try to, keep them off of the markers. But Zipp does the same thing. If you can pick a quarter and basically say, I'm taking this quarter, you're not getting here, and I've already got my side blocked off, you've got 3/4 of the board blocked off.
Yep.
You're winning it early and quickly.
And you've got the damage dealers that could lock down that middle.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Cursed Idol requires mobility. And that's what you want. You don't have the healing. Like, for the most part, when I take Cursed Idol, I'm going to look at, like, maybe some others that have some more healing. But there's no reason Zipp can't do it. Because, once again, he's going to stop the opponent from getting to the idol markers. So it doesn't really matter if you're taking damage, pushing things around. Because if they can't get to it, you're still winning.
Yeah, and looking at Reckoning, I mean, with Reckoning, it's obviously, killing power is important, but I think, and again, this is talk about being a broken record, mobility is important because you need to get to the models that you need to kill. I would imagine, obviously First Mate, I think would probably be good into Reckoning.
Absolutely.
Because of his mobility. But how squishy are things? I mean, is he good? I'm just Infamous in general. How are they into Reckoning?
They're pretty squishy, but once again, I kind of like Zipp for it because he's got a blast on every gun, like on every track of his gun. So he's softening things up for the late turns where you're going to want to kill more. So I think Zipp is not about like getting in there. If you're playing him into Reckoning, it's not about getting him in there and just murdering everything as fast as possible. He's playing this kind of long game where he's softening you up, and then he's going to send his guys in. Like, you don't want to send Wrestlers in right off the bat. They're squishy. I think Mancha's a little tougher than he looks because if you drop a piano marker near him, he's going to get shielded too. So he's got Hard to Wound, Shielded 2, and he's got Juggernaut to heal up. A lot going on there. So Mancha kind of can stick around and be like, you're not moving me, and I'm not moving you. But if you get close to me, I'm going to knock you, knock your head off. So,
and I would think that this is where you might look to Ophelia as a hire too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ophelia is definitely a nice second hire because she's going to do the same thing that Zipp does. She's going to be firing in, softening things up getting ready for that big go on like turn 3 or 4 where you try to kill as many models as possible.
So let's build a dream pool real quick, John. So you've got plant explosives is the strategy. What are the 2 to 5 schemes that you're really hoping to see in that pool?
Well, I'm going to want to be in their side of the board. So breakthrough, power ritual, both great schemes for Zipp to do because he's already there. He's already in the way. He's at some point he can basically just drop Earl off in the opponent's side of the board, and Earl can be dropping scheme markers while Zipp goes off and does his thing. So you definitely want to see those two. I think Take Prisoner is another actually pretty good one for him because his guys are so mobile that you can just zip over to something, grab it, and then, there's hardly any way. They're so quick, it's hardly any way to get away from them. Deliver a message is kind of the same way. Like, the guys are squishy, so you want to be careful as to not do it too early. They can do it. Like, it's easy. So I'm definitely going to want to see deliver a message. I'm going to want to see breakthrough, plant explosive. Outflank, once again, mobility is huge.
Yep. Well, now, when we look at a pool, especially when it comes to schemes, our first instinct is to say, what are the schemes that I'm really good at scoring, or what master or keyword am I going to bring because they could score on all of these? I think kind of the next level thinking, though, is to look at a scheme pool and not only say, this pool, I'm going to bring, this keyword because it's going to be able to score that, but you also want to see schemes out there that you can deny because
Absolutely.
Your opponent's picking out of the same pool. So I'd love to know, like, what are some schemes you like to see? Not because you're going to take them, but because you're going to make it really hard to score them.
Well, once again, I think those same schemes kind of fall in, like breakthrough. They're not getting across the board, so you're fine with them. If they want to take breakthrough, good luck. Especially because I have free loot, so I'm, anybody that you do drop, I'm getting close to and just removing markers. Like, the whole crew has ability to remove enemy scheme markers on bonus actions, so you're not wasting your big AP. You're just using bonus actions. Assassinate, Zipp so hard to pin down. Assassinate is very difficult to get off on him, so I'm fine with that. Same thing with deliver a message. You're not going to catch up to Zipp, so that's fine.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Like, there's not a scheme, I think, that he can't deny.
Yeah, well, that's his purpose, right? So it's good that it goes across, everything that you're going to see in that pool. That's like I said, I'm frustrated and I haven't even played against him yet. But it's something, and that I'm also really liking too is it feels like we're not seeing, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. There's such uniqueness in these keywords. I love how, Infamous is really its own thing. It's got its own mechanics. It's got its own purpose, its own place in the world. And, and it's not like any other keyword out there. And the more deep dives that we've been doing and the more I'm learning about all of these other keywords, it really seems to be something that they pulled off with a banner in 3rd edition. Like, when you look at all the other keywords in Bayou that you've played, John, are you getting that feeling that you have got a nice smorgasbord of looks and feels?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think Bayou, part of the reason I went to Bayou when we started 3rd edition was it didn't get a lot of play testing traditionally. So I was like, I'm going to play test these guys. I've got a whole faction of them because my son played and then he went off to college. So he just handed me his stuff. So I'm like, I've got this whole faction. I want to test them out. I want to see them be good. They're so much fun. And then when I got into playing in the beta, I was just amazed because, instead of just taking these usual suspects, you always saw Frank, you always saw Rooster Riders, you always saw, just the same models over and over again. Even though Bayou didn't get a new master, the whole faction feels new.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling that with all the factions, which is so exciting. And you talk about, seeing the same models. I think of all the factions in 2nd edition, the worst offender was Bayou. It seemed like regardless of what master was chosen in Gremlins at the time, you always saw like 3 or 4 models in every single crew. And this keyword system is doing a good job of moving away from that, which makes me very happy.
And I think just being able to make everybody, the gap between masters just a little bit closer. Like every time I look at Bayou Masters, I'm like, well, I can take Zipp. And I know I could probably play Zipp solo my entire Malifaux career and never get tired of him because he's just so good at what he does. But I could also bring Brewmaster, or I could bring Ma, or I could bring Sommer, and I would have a good experience of the game, which is awesome. Like, I love that. There's not any master right now in Bayou that I can look at and go, yeah, this guy's never going to see play.
Yeah, John, you and I have talked about this before offline. And, like me, you've played a lot of games. Not Jim Ortiz, a lot of games, or Paul, a lot of games, but you have played a lot of games. And we've agreed that even in second edition, Malifaux was the most balanced across the board, from power levels, from model to model and master to master. But it feels even tighter now in third. So something I think that was a strength of the game in second edition could prove to be an even bigger strength into third.
Oh, without a doubt. Like, when we talk about one of the key things that everybody was a little worried about was sort of the tightening things up, the simplifying a lot of things. But I think when they did that, it opened up an ability to go even further into depth with, so we're not spending so much time arguing about, well, this guy does that and this guy does that and this guy does that. We have uniqueness, but we also have a uniformity so that, we know when I say, oh, this guy has flurry, we know what flurry does. And that's fine. Like, especially when it comes to, being able to just make all of your crews do the things that you want them to do. I think when you look at, like, especially Bayou, and you were to look at, like, Brewmaster from second edition, Brewy he had this idea of what he did do, but the rules and the complexity of how he did things prevented him from doing all those things. Now, Brewy just does what he does, and it works within the game. And I think it's the same with Zipp too. Like Zipp.
Yeah, I think Brewy is a good example of something that I think that's significant, because when you were in a tournament and your opponent declared Brewmaster, and you had never played against Brewmaster, you're gonna spend 5 to 10 minutes before the game starts trying to wrap your head around the rules that Brewmaster uses, and then during the game, you're like, wait a minute. So this, then that, and then this. And I mean, he was complicated, and he was complicated to play against, let alone to play. And this, reducing the complexity, really, I think, helps with that. And, I think Brewmaster is a great example of it, John. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I think Zipp is kind of the same way, because, like, Zipp got more and more complex as they started adding upgrades to him in second edition. Now in third, they've taken that essence of what he was, they've condensed it, and he's still just as annoying as he was, but he's also just as complex as you want him to be.
Yeah. I don't think we lost any depth in this process at all. No. I think the game is if not more deep than it was in second edition, and it's a lot easier to play. And the pregame ritual of explaining what every single one of your models does to your opponent is gone. You can give, in less than 4 or 5 sentences, you can give somebody an idea of what they're up against because of the reduction in complexity.
I think the other thing that is easy to say too is that, when we were starting second edition and somebody new was starting, I was telling them, you're going to spend 3-4 games just figuring out what your crew does. Then you're going to spend the next 5 games figuring out how to score schemes and strategies. Like, I think some of that has been brought down in this edition, because, like, I can hand you a Zipp crew. I can give you a quick rundown of what he does. And in that game, you should be able to get a good idea of how he plays.
Yeah, and this ties into what you brought up too, John, is that commonality of abilities is, when you face your first model that has flurry, you don't have to learn it again next time you see flurry. When you come across your first model with ride with me or fly with me, then you don't have to learn it again, because ride with me and fly with me are the same with every model across the game.
And when your opponent has ride with me, you're like, oh, I know what that does. So,
yep.
I think when you look at a good example between second and third is when you look at Zipp and Karis. So Karis had her ability in second edition, which was very similar to Zipp's ability, and they were very, very different mechanically. Now they both have the same thing. It does the same thing. It works the same way, but it has two different uses when you play it with Zipp versus playing it with Karis.
Yeah, a great example, John. That's a great example. All right, so we're now at the point in the podcast where we've decided that there's the most powerful master is Zipp, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to throw a bone to those non-Bayou players out there. So, John, when we get back from our break, I want you to talk about some things that people that play against Bayou can implement, and some tech they can bring to their crews that might give Zipp a bad day. So we'll be right back. Okay, as a non-Bayou player, this is my favorite segment, and that is, how do I play against Zipp? So, John, can you give the listeners an idea? What are things that you're hoping not to see in the opposing crew when you're playing Zipp?
Well, with Bayou in general, I really don't want to see armor. I really don't want to see shielded, incorporeal, especially against Zipp, because you can just walk through markers, and that's really, really frustrating. I think Zipp really...
I would think fly too, right?
Yeah. Being able to fly over things is frustrating. Bayou in general just does not deal well with anything that's going to just be hard to move off the table. The other thing I think is blow it to hell.
Oh, right.
Any models that can just flat out destroy multiple destructible markers. Zipp's going to have to figure out how to place his piano markers so that he's not losing all of them instantly. And that should give you gaps to be able to shoot through or do whatever you need to do through. So we don't want to see that stuff. I think focus fire is probably one of the best ways to deal with Zipp's crew. It might come down to the point where you just have to ignore Zipp, let him do his thing, and concentrate on the stuff that's going to hurt you, like the first mate or Mancha Roja or anything. If you can take the first mate down to half his hit points in one shot, then it doesn't matter that he has butterfly jump, because the next attack is just going to take him down.
Yep. And I think looking at, and this is true of anything, not just playing against Zipp, but looking at that Zipp crew and saying, here's the pool. Here's what he's likely going to be going for. Who's scoring his points, and anything that's not Zipp, if you can get them off the board, that's its own form of denial.
Killing Earl very early is a thing. Earl definitely, he scores a lot of points for Zipp in almost every game that I play. Now, granted, Zipp offers concealment, so that's a little harder, but it's doable. Definitely getting rid of those key pieces. Also, just not taking interact heavy crews. If you're going to try to score harness to ley lines against Zipp, you're having a bad day.
Now, I would imagine, going back to Earl real quick, John, I would imagine, it sounds like Earl is very often near Zipp.
Yeah.
At least for part or not all of the game. So when an opponent's sitting there and they've got Zipp, who has got some really good defensive tech, and they've got that mask in hand or a stone ready to use that mask for the defensive trigger. It sounds to me like maybe charging Earl is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And also remember that when Zipp does his defensive trigger, Earl doesn't go with him because it's a place.
Right.
So he can accidentally leave Earl out in the cold, which is not where you want him to be. Now, Earl is going to try to do all his points as early as possible. So trying to disrupt that very quickly is a thing that you want to do. You want to definitely make sure that you keep him far out of reach of any enemies.
And John, how about how important are triggers for Zipp and his crew? I mean, is stunned something that really can have an impact?
Yeah, stunning Zipp is a big issue. Stagger on Zipp is a big issue. Being able to knock his movement down is big. The rest of the crew doesn't really care as much about stunned, but Zipp especially does not want to not be able to draw that trigger out. Like, he needs to be able to get away if you're going to target him.
Now, when this comes out, John, it'll be past release. But we're recording this, 2 weeks before the release of M3E, and we've got a tournament the Saturday after release. And I assume you're going to be playing Bayou.
Yeah, definitely going to be playing Bayou, and I expect Zipp will show up.
That's very, very exciting. All right. Well, John, I appreciate it, man. It was really good to have you, finally get on the show. You've been really one of the key resources when people have Bayou questions here in North Carolina. So I appreciate you sharing that knowledge, and we're going to have to bring you back because there's a lot of other Bayou masters that we're going to have to chew through. So I do appreciate it, my friend.
I'm so excited to talk about every single Bayou master. It's ridiculous how excited I am to talk about these guys. So,
well, I think that we're seeing that enthusiasm really across the board. I mean, I played, Guild and Rezzers in second edition, and I can't get over the fact, a lot of times you think, when a game changes editions, what new faction are you going to play? Well, my new faction is Rezzer because it's not the faction I played in second.
And I think that's pretty true. I think Bayou and Rezzers are 100% the most changed factions out there. Like, Guild still pretty much plays like Guild. Thunder still pretty much plays like Thunders. Outcast still pretty much plays like Outcasts. Neverborn has a couple new tricks, but they still mostly play like Neverborn. I think Bayou and Rezzers got a huge facelift, which was probably needed. I know it was needed in Bayou. Rezzers, I think they stepped away a little bit from summoning, which is cool. So
yeah, I'm glad they did that, because what ended up happening with Rezzers is if you weren't summoning, you were losing. And whereas now that's not the focus. And even Von Stuck, which is kind of our new, summoning master. If you listen to the Von Stuck deep dive, that's really not what he does either, which I think is neat. But I completely agree. I think that definitely for Rezzers, they got a huge facelift for the better. And it sounds like Bayou did as well. But I think that even for, the Thunders and the Arcanists and Guild players out there, it's a brand new day because they're going to start playing masters they never played in second edition.
No, I just played against Hoffman last night or a couple nights ago. And first of all, once again, Bayou hates armor, and that's all Hoffman is. But I was just stunned by how fast that crew was. Like, he was just wherever he needed to be, whenever he needed to be there. And I was just like, all right, well, I guess this is what I'm doing. So
it's exciting times, man. It's exciting times. And if you and I get paired round one, in 2 weeks.
I'll try not to mark us into your Sonya again.
So it was my first tournament, right? Never played a tournament, been playing the game, probably my fourth game ever. I'd spent, my first couple games getting the bejesus beaten out of me by Rasputina at the hands of Jimmy. So I come to my first tournament, and you have to understand that as many games as I played all the GW games and everything. I've been playing, miniature games for 10 some odd years. I had actually never played in a tournament before because I really wasn't into the competitive scene in other games. But because of how Malifaux is, I love the competitive scene for Malifaux. So I'm all excited, never done this before. I put down my Sonya, all pretty and painted, ready to go. Shake hands with John, and he's got Marcus on the other side. And top of turn 2, there's no more Sonya. So welcome to Malifaux.
Your Sonya was just and I measured it out to, you were just an inch in the Cerberus's range. And I was like, I'm going to put some fear into him because I don't want Sonya getting anywhere near close to me. And then she was dead. And I was like, oh, well, now I feel bad.
Yeah, it was brutal, man. And I'll tell you what, any of my listeners, when we meet in person, I can tell you all the reasons why Arcanists are just, bad people play Arcanists. That's really what it comes down to. All right.
Well, I have a feeling you'll feel probably the same way about Zipp by the time it's all said and done.
It sounds like it, my friend. It sounds like it. All right, John. Like I said, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right, everybody, take care. Thanks for listening. Be sure to rate and write a review on this podcast so we can find more people almost as cool as you are. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching for Third Floor Wars. That's THIRD. We'll catch you next time on the Third Floor.